Hello, my friends. Leo Babauta from Zen Habits here. And in this video, we're going to talk about how to actually overcome, face, work with, deal with the fear of failure. So fear of failure is a universal fear. Everybody has it, and yet we all think it's kind of individual to us and like, it's kind of my own thing and there's something wrong with me for having it. No, you're just human. It is also a fear that is something that tries to fly under the radar. So most of us don't even notice when we are feeling this fear of failure. What we will notice is the symptoms of it, or the actions we take or don't take from this fear. So for example, avoidance, procrastination, perfectionism, indecision, not putting, hiding ourselves, not putting our work out there, doing some things that are like, faking it, kind of thing. So these are just a few of the examples, but there's a lot of other things that we might do from this fear of failure. And so we might not notice the fear of failure, but we just notice the avoidance. We just notice, oh, I'm really like not doing this thing that I said I was going to do. And we don't really understand what's going on. Well, if you are avoiding, if you have a lot of resistance, if you're procrastinating, if you're distracting yourself, if you're getting caught up in a lot of busy work that isn't actually the meaningful, purposeful stuff that you're trying to do, if you're caught up in perfectionism, if you're caught up in other control mechanisms, these kinds of things, indecision, doubts, these are what's underneath all of that is fear. So there's some kind of fear underneath that. So that's actually my first thing that I want to share here in this video is if you're noticing any of these kinds of things that is stopping you from moving forward. I don't want to put something out there. I don't want to put something on social media. I don't want to put, I don't want people to judge me. I don't want to be criticized. Underneath all of that is fear. Okay, and fear can be completely reasonable. You're not like stupid for having fear. You're not weak or cowardly or anything like that. You just have fear. You're human. We all have fear. So notice that there's fear underneath that. And we can ask ourselves, well, fear of what? It doesn't really matter. We can just call it fear of failure. There's, a plethora of fears. There's so many kinds of fears, but it's easier for us, for the sake of this video, of this conversation, to actually just call it fear of failure. So let me give you an example of some of the fears. I'm afraid that people are going to think that I am, not good enough. They're going to think, who the hell is he? They're going to judge me for what I'm putting out there. They're going to be like, oh, he's not an expert. They're going to see through me trying to pretend that I'm something else. I'm going to embarrass myself. I'm going to do it and no one's going to care. Put it out there and crickets, right? Like no impact at all. People are going to laugh at me. I'm going to feel inadequate. I'm going to feel like an imposter. So these are some examples of fears, but they're all really fear of failing. Like if I were, to have tremendous success here, maybe I'm not going to be afraid of embarrassing myself because I did something amazing, right? And so these are fears of failure. Now, there's another fear that people will often say they're like, I'm not afraid of failing. I'm afraid of succeeding. I have fear of success. And I think that's a little bit of a cop-out. So let's not use that. That's also fear of failure. So, just to kind of explain that a little bit, let's imagine you were super successful. Let's say you launched a business, right? And it made millions of dollars and you're super successful. And then you're like, but then what, right? Then I'm going to be super busy. I'm going to have to do all, manage a whole team. I'm going to have to manage money. And so I'm going to have all this success. But I'm not going to be able to handle that. I don't want to be able to manage all these people because what, right? And then there's fear of failure there where you're not going to be able to manage the success. So, writing a book, you're like, oh, my book might become a bestseller. That's scarier to me than not doing the book at all. And why is that? Well, if I'm a bestseller, maybe I have to go on TV and talk about it. If I'm a bestseller, maybe there's going to be a lot of demands on my time and I already feel overwhelmed. If I have a bestseller, maybe I'm going to be like put in the public spotlight and be a target for like online criticism or bullying. It's easier if I can just fly under the radar. So all of that is really just not trusting ourselves to deal with what's on the other side of the success. So we're afraid of success, but really we're afraid of failing on the other side of the success. So yes, fear of success, sure, you can call it that, but it's also a fear of failure on the other side of success. Okay, so we've talked about fear, and we can just lump them all together as fear of failure. Now, if you want to call it something else, that's totally fine, but for the sake of this conversation, we're going to say fear of failure. And you can substitute it to, I'm afraid of like embarrassing myself or looking stupid, whatever. Success, go ahead and call it that if you want. But let's imagine we call it fear of failure. And the first thing is we notice that there is fear there because we can see the avoidance, resistance, procrastination, all of that kind of stuff, right? So we can surmise, we can guess that there's fear of failure underneath that. We don't have to know that it's there. We can just know that it's there based on the evidence of everything that we're doing or not doing. So, if I didn't have this fear, what would I actually be doing? That's a good question to ask yourself. If I didn't have this fear, what would I be doing? If I completely trusted myself, is another way to put it. If I completely trusted myself, what would I be doing? If I didn't have to worry about my reputation, what would I be doing? If I didn't have to worry about being criticized or, my self-image, what would I be doing? So ask these kinds of questions. They're all versions of the same question. But ask yourself, what would I do? Well, I would create this and I would put it out there and I would stand behind it and I would, whatever it is that you would do, right? And so then commit yourself to actually doing those things. So if you're like, if I trusted myself, if I didn't have to worry about my reputation, if I didn't have to worry about failing, if I knew that I couldn't fail, these are the things that I would do, then commit yourself to doing those anyhow. And what you're going to notice is that that's going to put you up against that fear for sure. Because what I'm going to encourage you to do is to learn to work with that fear. And we're going to talk about that next. But first, we're setting ourselves up to actually be confronted by that fear. What if you could be willing to be confronted by your fear? You could train yourself to not have to run from it, to not have to resort to whatever protection mechanism you've trained yourself to do. You can actually let go of the protection mechanism. So what I want you to do is actually ask yourself, what would I do if I couldn't fail, if I could trust myself completely, if I didn't have to worry about my reputation? And then commit yourself to that. Not only commit yourself to yourself, but to others. Say, I am going to be creating a new, TikTok video or Instagram video or YouTube video or whatever, new chapter or, one page of my book manuscript every single weekday. I'm going to commit myself to that, and I will let you know whether I'm doing it or not. So you're committing yourself and you're holding yourself accountable. Now, guess what? You can't actually avoid being confronted by this fear. You've now set it up so that you will train with this fear, which is going to be a lot of fun. So how do we actually work with it now? Now that we've committed ourselves, some of you are going to avoid committing yourself because you're afraid of this fear. But let's imagine you're planning to commit yourself to it. How do we actually work with the fear? So what we want to do is to say, right now, I am committed to actually sitting down and writing that book or writing, making this video or, reaching out to people or committing myself. Right now, I'm committed to doing this, and yet I am trying to do everything but that. I'm going to check my messages. I want to answer emails. I want to watch YouTube or Netflix. I want to go clean my house. Whatever it is that I can do to avoid this thing. And what I want you to do is to pause just for a minute or two and notice, ooh, I really don't want to do this. I'm really resisting it. And then what I want you to do, so we're noticing that there's fear there, that there's resistance. Maybe we might notice that there's some thoughts. What are the thoughts? Oh, it's like, it's okay. I can do it tomorrow, right? Or, I got to do this thing because it's really urgent and they're waiting for it. And, therefore I can put this off. It's fine to put it off for now. I'll work on this later. Whatever the thought is. So we're noticing that there's resistance, that we want to run from it, and that we have some thoughts. And then the next thing I want you to do as you sit here and pause is just to notice what's the feeling in the body. There's some kind of emotion. Maybe it's overwhelm, anxiety, fear, obviously. Maybe you're frustrated with yourself. Maybe you're disappointed. Maybe you're feeling discouraged. Maybe you're feeling sad, lonely, inadequate, whatever it is. We actually don't even need to name it. We can just feel the sensation in the body. Maybe it feels like a tightness, like contraction. Maybe it feels like a tenderness. Maybe it feels like radiating energy somewhere in the body. I encourage you to look somewhere in the torso. Chest, heart area is a good place to look. And then just sit there with that emotion. Usually it's not so intense that you can't just be with it. When I say be with it, that means just rest your attention on it and just kind of be curious, non-judgmental, even a friendly kind of attitude towards whatever you notice. Like you're just like, it's okay that you're here. Yeah, it's okay. And I encourage you to breathe, like deep belly breaths. Slow down your breathing, long, slow, deep breaths. And as you do so, what you're doing is called emotional regulation. You're soothing the emotion, you're allowing it to be there, you're acknowledging that it's there. You're bringing some curiosity and friendliness to it if possible. But at the very least, you're breathing and slowing down your breathing and just allowing your nervous system to relax a bit and for you just to sit there with it. Now, if it's super intense, where it feels dangerous, like you want to just curl up into a ball because it's so traumatic, and don't sit with it for too long. Maybe for a couple seconds and then go and distract yourself. Distraction is what we want to do. Distraction might sound like a bad thing, but actually distraction is helpful if the emotion is too intense to be with, if we're too caught up in it. And so if that feels too intense, distract yourself, go talk to somebody, get some help, comfort yourself, whatever you need to do. But for the most part, it's not going to be that intense. And so I encourage you just to sit with it, even if it's for 10 seconds, 15, 20, 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes, just stay with it. And if you can practice this, then you're going to be practicing learning to soothe yourself, emotionally regulate yourself, and get yourself to a place where you can start to take some action. Now, if you can't, maybe you can only do 2 seconds of it, and then you go and distract yourself, get away from it. That's okay. You did 2 seconds. Celebrate that. Distract yourself, sure, but then come back and be like, man, I did 2 seconds. That's actually pretty amazing. And what we want to do is to let yourself do a sub-maximal amount. So if you could actually do 5 seconds, just do 2 seconds. If you could do a minute, just do 30 seconds. So do about half of what you could actually do. We don't want you to be draining yourself by being with this intense emotion. If you drain your battery down to zero, that's too much. Now you can't do anything for the rest of the day, and you're going to not want to do this kind of training. So do sub-maximal training, so about half of what you can do. So if you can do 5 seconds, do 2 seconds. Do 2 seconds again, do 2 seconds, until 2 seconds feels like that's not 50% of what I can do. That's probably more like 10%. Now you can add more. Now do 5 seconds. And then notice, like sometimes you're going to overshoot it and you're going to be like, oh my God, that was so draining. I can't do that too often. Okay, do less next time. So just see how long you can stay with the emotion. And what you're doing here is you're training yourself not only to be able to recognize the emotion, to sit with it, to notice where it is in your body, but to stay with it for a little longer and to soothe it. And if you can do that, you're training your emotional system, your mind and your nervous system You're training your body to be able to be with emotions for longer. Now, most of us don't want to do that, and we are invested in not seeing the emotion and getting away from it. So we'll do whatever we can to get away from it. And that's okay. You're going to do that sometimes. But if you can, stay with the emotion for a little bit longer. Breathe. See if you can do 4 breaths. If you can do 4 breaths, see if you can, increase it up to 10 breaths, 10 long, slow, deep breaths. If you can do 1 breath, fine. That's all you need to do. And what we want to do is eventually increase the number of breaths that we can do. And then when we can do 10 slow, long breaths, and we're like, that's submaximal. I could probably do 20. What I want you to do is do 10 and, have it be submaximal, and then take a small step towards action. So if I said, I'm going to record a video and I do some 10 breaths, and now I'm a little bit soothed now. I can actually probably start the video. What I want you to do is just open your phone up, press record, and say hello, and then stop. So this is not a video you're going to actually put anywhere in the world, but you're just practicing recording video, even though you've now just soothed your emotional system. So, if you can do more than hello, be like, hey, this is Leo. I'm just randomly talking into my phone, blah, 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 blah. Do that and then delete it later. That's great. If you could actually record, a halfway decent video and send it to a friend, that's a next step. If you can record a halfway decent video and post it online, amazing. You might notice that you need to sit and breathe again, a second time right before you post it. That's okay. Like, notice when the fear comes up and sit with it, emotionally regulate yourself, and then take the next small step. So I gave you a number of steps with recording a video. If you're writing a book, maybe you just open up your Google Doc or your Word doc. Maybe you write a sentence. Maybe you read a little bit of what you've written. Do a little bit. Take some little bit of steps. And what you're going to find is that as you learn to emotionally regulate yourself, you're also going to be able to increase the amount of steps that you take, or the small steps, so that they're tiny steps, but you're building on them. And eventually you can take 10 tiny steps without having to shut down. As you do this, what you're doing is you're training yourself to emotionally regulate and take some small steps. They will get easier and easier if you train yourself every single day. If you're feeling like that's really too easy, train yourself more. Do it multiple times in a day, 5 times in a day, little bits, 10 breaths, take a couple of small steps, go take a break, come back, do it again, go take a break, come back, do it again, go take a break. If you do 5 little bits a day, and you don't have to do 5, but you might start to slowly add in until you're doing 5 a day, you will be making incremental but incredible progress. So the incremental progress is slow at first, and then it starts to become really fast. So that's what I want you to do, is train yourself. If you can do 10 breaths and then a couple of small steps, do that once a day, and then twice a day, and then 3 times a day. Once you get to 5 times a day, you're going to start to see a curve. Maybe not right away, but pretty soon. And eventually, it's going to become a lot easier. Now, eventually, that's going to become really easy. Like, the thing that was giving you a lot of fear actually has very minimal fear. It's just because you've trained yourself to be able to face that. And you will then face the next level of your fear of failure. And what I encourage you to do is to recognize, the thing like recording videos and posting them online, that's not so hard. Here's the next bit: asking for help, asking for money, whatever it is that you are afraid of doing next. That becomes your next thing to work with, and work with it in the same exact way we just talked about here. Notice the fear, notice the tendency to run away, notice the thoughts that make it okay to run away, notice where the feeling is in the body. Breathe and be with the sensation, emotionally regulate, soothe yourself, work your way up to 10 breaths, take some small steps, work to up to 5 times a day, and eventually that will fall again like another domino. That's how we work with the fear of failure, through this training system. It is not an easy thing, but if you are willing to actually work with it, you will see yourself able to face things that you were never able to face before. I encourage you to get some support. If you are interested in getting some support, I have a few ways. One is right now, as I record this video, I have my Fearless Mastery program opening for enrollment. You can go to fearlessmastery.zenhabits.net and check it out. If it's closed by the time you watch this, I reopen it once a year, but it's my small group coaching program and mastermind program. Best thing that I offer, deepest program, also the biggest financial commitment. The second way is my Fearless Living Academy, which we are doing training in this as we speak. Come in and do the monthly thing that we call the practice, where you commit yourself and you get some support. And finally, I also do one-on-one coaching with people. I have one-on-one clients who keep a journal, and they journal this very training, and then I actually comment on their journal. I learn from what their mistakes are, what they're struggling with, and then I coach them in live coaching sessions, audio phone calls, and we actually work with this fear of failure. And it's actually a really deep, meaningful way to get supported in the leadership that you're doing in the world and what you're trying to create, the impact you're trying to make. So come and get supported with that, coaching.zenhabits.net for that one. Fearless Living Academy is fearlessliving.zenhabits.net. So Fearless Mastery, Fearless Living, and Coaching, all of them at that word, .zenhabits.net. And you can check it out, sign up, get in contact with me. I hope that you train yourself one way or the other, whether it's with my support or not. And I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment. Let me know what helped, what questions you might have that I can continue to answer. Your questions really help me because I can make future videos, and I'm also going to write a book on this topic. So if you want to leave questions, it actually helps me with my upcoming book. And then give a thumbs up to this video. It helps others to find it in the algorithm, which we want to do. There's lots of people here on YouTube who could use this content, so give a thumbs up and subscribe and share it with others. These all really help me. I really find it meaningful when people support the channel and help be a part of this, an active part of this Zen Habits community. Thanks, my friends. I will talk to you later.